Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 10 of season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars, called Secret Weapons. And, well folks, we've finally happened. The obligatory episode of the season that's pretty much kind of a turkey. I gotta tell you folks, I did not enjoy this episode. Like, there was a nice moment here or there, but overall, no, I really did not enjoy this episode. In fact, I even found myself kind of wishing that it would end already, so I could go off and do some, well, basically go do some minor chores around my apartment. I mean, that's how much of a disappointment that this episode ultimately ended up being for me. But okay, well, let's talk about some of the finer points of this episode. Okay, on the upside, let's talk about a few things that I did like. First of all, in the little meeting scene at the very beginning, we get to see an Anx. That's A-N-X is how you spell it. Jedi. That's the fellow with the really tall, finned head. For some reason, I just like the Anx as a species in the Star Wars universe. I just kind of get a kick out of them. I enjoy it when we see basically Jedi that aren't humans or just don't look like humans with some paint slapped on them. I enjoy it when we see the more unusual Jedi, and that we're reminded that the Jedi Order is all about including members of different species because all life is tied together by the Force. That's a very great way of highlighting that aspect of the Jedi and their philosophy. Now, even though he doesn't get any lines, one of the characters that we see in the background, along with Ayala Secura, is Terra Sinube from Lightsaber Lost. Now, Sinube is a great example of how to correctly do a somewhat oddball character in the Star Wars universe. Now, the two main characters that were introduced here in this episode, Garkon and Whack, are examples of how not to do that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not exactly going to put them in the same boat as Jar Jar Binks, but, well, I think you guys kind of get what I'm driving at. Let me see here. In fact, the whole general guy, it's sort of like he's there kind of going around blustering. It sort of feels like if Jiminy Cricket thought that he was General Patton. And of course, then at the end, it turns out this guy is just some analyst with delusions of grandeur. Now, that in itself had potential, but the story just didn't find it. In fact, you know what? More than anything, this reminds me of, it reminds me of some 80s high school movie where, the ragtag bunch of misfits, in fact, the droids are even referred to as ragtag in this episode by Garkon, ultimately end up, for whatever reason, having to team up briefly with the jerk jock who's been giving them a hard time for most of the film. I mean, really, if you're going to do kind of a secret mission in a war movie, well, okay, we've seen that done on the show, we've seen it done well. If you're going to do a more humorous kind of thing in a war movie, well, okay, that's a little harder to pull off, but it's certainly doable. I mean, hey, look how many seasons Hogan's Heroes lasted, right? But yeah, overall, the writing in this episode, it just really falls flat pretty much every time you turn around. Okay, now one thing that I did like was the mention that R2 got a tactical upgrade. He got those really nice boosters. Now, was it episode 3 where we see him doing some stuff with those boosters? If so, okay, that's a little bit of a nice continuity. And if you stop and think about it, one, it makes sense that R2 would get some sort of a tactical upgrade. I mean, he's Anakin's droid. Anakin's always going into battle. We see Anakin, zipping around in the Azure Angel. That's the name of his little personal fighter craft, taking down separatists. So, tactically upgrading R2, as I said, it makes perfect sense, and it goes on and helps to make some of the things that R2 does in episodes 3 through 6 much more believable. So yeah, that's a really nice bit of writing. That's a really good idea. I'm glad this episode introduced that idea, but I still think that's, at the end of the day, the strongest point in this episode's favor. Now, one other thing that I think some people might kind of be wondering is, well, why didn't they put just like a radio or something in with Garkon so that he could communicate with the droids rather than having to stick his head outside of the droid and give him orders verbally. Well, keep in mind this whole episode kicks off because of the Jedi and the Republic intercepting separatist transmissions. Now, if somebody on the droid ship intercepts a transmission, then the whole mission is probably sunk right then and there. It is actually probably much more simple and safe to just have the guy stick his head out of the droid and issue the orders that way. Okay, so we get the character of Whack, who's supposed to be one of the funny droids. You know a funny droid that I'm reminded of that they had on the show? Remember that droid voiced by Seth Green that was hanging around with Cad Bane? Okay, that was a good example of a funny droid. Whack is not a funny droid. Whack is basically just kind of an annoying character that you sort of hope gets shuffled off to the side and is never really seen from again. Now, another thing that I will give this episode points for is the zero-G combat scene. That was actually really nice. It was interesting. The animation was really good. And it was actually genuinely fun to watch that scene. But let me see, just kind of looking at my notes. Yeah, that's it, folks. I know, super, super short review. But really, beyond that, I really have nothing to say. This episode was just an enormous, enormous letdown for me. It just really kind of felt like a big waste of my time. Well, I still have faith in this season. I mean, just thinking back of some of the things that I know are going to happen just based on the previews that we've seen, I'm just going to call this the obligatory sucky episode of the season and hope that it is indeed the only one that we end up having to sit through. With that said, folks, I'm going to wrap it up here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.